At 16, Ethan Walker inherited a train station that hadn't seen a passenger in 42 years. His older brothers inherited everything else: the family ranch, the cattle, the grain silos, the investment accounts. Their grandfather's attorney adjusted his glasses. The old depot belongs to Ethan. The room erupted with laughter. His oldest brother grinned. You inherited a pile of bricks. The younger one added, maybe the rats will pay rent. Their grandfather had died only a week earlier. The brothers wasted no time. We're selling the ranch. You'll need somewhere else to live. By sunset, Ethan packed his clothes into 2 cardboard boxes and rode his bicycle 5 miles to the forgotten train depot. The building stood alone beside rust-covered railroad tracks swallowed by tall grass. The faded wooden sign still read, Willow Creek Depot. Paint peeled from every wall. Several windows were broken. The platform roof leaned dangerously. Wild vines climbed the old brick chimney. Yet, the building still possessed quiet dignity. Ethan unlocked the heavy oak door. Dust floated through beams of afternoon sunlight. Inside remained an untouched piece of history. Long wooden benches, an antique ticket counter, brass luggage carts. A giant station clock permanently stopped at 4:17. Even the telegraph office remained exactly as it had been decades earlier. He smiled. It deserves another chance. The first night, he slept inside the former station master's office. Rain drummed gently against the roof. Despite everything, it already felt more like home than the ranch ever had. Every morning, Ethan worked before school, delivering newspapers. Every afternoon, he repaired another section of the depot. He replaced broken glass, repaired leaking gutters, scrubbed decades of soot from the brick walls. He polished the old station sign until its lettering became visible again. Slowly, the abandoned depot came back to life. One afternoon, an elderly retired conductor named Henry Collins stopped by carrying a toolbox. I wondered who finally bought this place. My grandfather left it to me. Henry smiled. He was a good man. You knew him? For 50 years. Henry slowly walked through the depot. Finally, he stopped inside the old ticket office. He frowned. Something's missing. What? There used to be another room. Ethan looked around. I don't see one. Henry pointed toward the rear brick wall. The ticket office continued another 12 feet. But that wall's solid. Henry gently tapped several bricks. Most produced a sharp sound. One section echoed softly. Hollow. He looked puzzled. Your grandfather sealed it. Did he ever tell you why? Henry shook his head. He only smiled and said, every station needs one destination only the right traveler can reach. Those words stayed with Ethan. Weeks passed. The restored depot began attracting attention. Local photographers stopped by. History enthusiasts offered to volunteer. Even children came to watch Ethan restore the old platform. One Saturday morning, a businessman wearing an expensive suit arrived. This station is remarkable. Thank you. My company specializes in historic properties. He handed Ethan a folder. We'd like to purchase the depot. Ethan laughed politely. It's barely standing. We'll offer $2 million. Ethan stared. For this old station? Cash. No. The man nodded respectfully. If you change your mind. He left a business card. Please call. Over the following month, 2 more buyers appeared. Each offer increased. For $1 million. Then $7 million. Every visitor asked the same unusual question. Has anyone opened the old ticket office? Ethan always answered honestly. No. Every one of them seemed strangely relieved. One rainy evening, curiosity finally won. He carried a lantern into the ticket office. The rear brick wall looked ordinary, except for one detail. A single row of bricks near the floor appeared slightly newer. He knelt. Brushing away decades of dust, he uncovered a small brass railroad emblem embedded in the mortar. He pressed it. Nothing happened. Then Henry's words echoed in his mind. Every station needs one destination. He gently turned the brass emblem like the wheel of an old safe. A heavy mechanical click echoed through the building. The entire brick wall slowly slid sideways. Cold air drifted outward. Behind it stood a narrow hallway leading into complete darkness. Ethan lifted the lantern. This was here all along. The passage ended at a heavy oak door. Above it hung a beautifully carved wooden sign. Station Archives. The brass handle still shined. Someone had polished it not long before the room was sealed. He slowly opened the door. His lantern illuminated something completely unexpected. Not a storage room. Not a cellar. An enormous railway planning library. Floor-to-ceiling oak shelves filled with leather-bound journals. Historic railroad maps. Engineering drawings. Town surveys. Property records. Glass display cases holding antique locomotive models. At the center stood a magnificent oak desk. Resting on it sat one sealed envelope. Across the front, written in his grandfather's unmistakable handwriting, were 3 words. For Ethan only. His hands trembled. He carefully opened it. The very first sentence made him freeze. If you're reading this, then you restored the depot before asking what it was worth. A tear rolled down his cheek. He whispered, "You knew?" He eagerly turned the page. Then he heard something. Not footsteps. Not voices. The distant whistle of a train. Impossible. No train had traveled these tracks in decades. The whistle sounded again. Closer this time. The giant station clock on the wall suddenly began ticking for the first time in over 40 years. Tick, tick, tick. Ethan slowly looked toward the old platform. Outside, a bright locomotive headlight appeared through the evening fog at the far end of the abandoned tracks. Ethan stood frozen. The locomotive whistle echoed once more. The bright headlight rolled slowly closer through the fog. Then, just before reaching the depot, it stopped. The light went dark. Silence returned. He rushed outside. Nothing. No locomotive. No freight cars. Only the abandoned tracks disappearing into the night. He looked down. Fresh tire marks crossed the old railway crossing. Not train tracks. A maintenance vehicle. Someone had driven along the old railroad service road with a powerful spotlight aimed straight ahead. Relieved, Ethan returned to the hidden archive. He unfolded the next page of his grandfather's letter. The whistle wasn't meant to frighten you. It was meant to tell you the depot is awake again. He frowned. The letter continued. This library isn't your inheritance. Ethan looked around. If the library wasn't the inheritance, then what was? He kept reading. Nearly 50 years earlier, his grandfather, Samuel Walker, had worked as a railroad survey engineer. As railroad companies abandoned branch lines across the state, thousands of acres surrounding those tracks were quietly forgotten. Most people believed the land was worthless. Samuel discovered otherwise. Hidden within old railroad deeds were legal transportation easements connecting dozens of towns. Those easements controlled future rights-of-way for utilities, fiber optic cables, water pipelines, hiking trails, and regional transportation corridors. As communities grew, those forgotten corridors became incredibly valuable. Large investment firms quietly tried purchasing abandoned depots to gain control of them. Samuel refused every offer. Instead, he spent decades legally acquiring neighboring easements whenever abandoned rail companies auctioned them. He created the Willow Creek Heritage Trust. Every survey, every property deed, every easement agreement, every engineering map, every legal document, everything remained hidden inside the depot archive. The depot had never been the treasure. It had protected the records, waiting for the one person who cared enough to save it. Waiting for Ethan. A modern valuation report slipped from the folder. Willow Creek Heritage Trust. Estimated value, $347 million. Ethan quietly lowered the paper. $347 million. Not because of the depot. Because the trust controlled hundreds of miles of historic transportation corridors. His grandfather's letter continued. The trust transfers only to the heir who restores the station before discovering its value. Ethan smiled. Without realizing it, he had already fulfilled the condition. He repaired the roof, saved the waiting room, restored the platform. Not for money, because history deserved another chance. He continued searching the desk. Another envelope waited beneath the maps. Smaller, addressed simply, "My youngest grandson." His hands trembled. He carefully opened it. "Ethan, if you're reading this, then your brothers probably laughed at the depot." A tear rolled down his face. "That's all right. People often confuse size with importance. The smallest station sometimes connects the longest journey." He continued reading. "I watched all 3 of you grow. One loved winning. One loved owning. You loved fixing. When you were 11, you spent an entire weekend repairing the depot's broken station clock, while everyone else went fishing." Ethan smiled. He remembered. The clock never worked. But he'd tried anyway. The letter continued. "That told me everything I needed to know. You repair places because you believe they matter. That cannot be taught." The final paragraph read, "Protect these corridors. Connect communities. Never forget that railroads were built to bring people together, not divide them. Suddenly a voice echoed from the archive entrance. Ethan. He turned quickly. Henry stood there holding another lantern. I hoped I'd find you. You knew? Henry nodded. Your grandfather left me one instruction. What was it? When the archive opens, bring him the station ledger. Henry handed Ethan a thick leather book. Inside were hundreds of photographs. Families arriving by train. Children greeting returning soldiers. Farmers shipping harvests. Station workers laughing together. Ticket agents helping travelers. Every picture included handwritten notes. Not about trains. About people. Samuel had recorded birthdays, reunions, weddings, and homecomings that passed through Willow Creek Depot. Henry smiled. Your grandfather always said, the tracks carried freight, but the station carried lives. Weeks later, attorney Rebecca Lawson arrived. She confirmed every document. The Willow Creek Heritage Trust legally belonged to Ethan. Its easement agreements generated steady income from responsibly managed utility corridors and public infrastructure projects. Reporters expected him to sell immediately. Instead, he surprised everyone. The depot reopened, not as a shopping center, not as an office building. It became the Willow Creek Railway Museum and Community Center. The waiting room became a public reading library. The freight room became a workshop where retired craftsmen taught woodworking, metalworking, and restoration. The old telegraph office became a local history archive. School children visited every week. Families gathered on weekends. Cyclists and hikers used the restored rail trail that followed the historic corridor. Revenue from the trust funded scholarships for trade schools, preservation grants for historic buildings, and emergency housing for homeless teenagers. Exactly the kind of help Ethan wished had existed when he was 16. His brothers eventually visited. They expected resentment. Instead, Ethan handed them old family photographs from a station ledger. For several minutes, nobody spoke. Finally, the oldest brother quietly said, I thought Grandpa left you a building. Ethan smiled. He left me a responsibility. Years later, visitors often asked why he never replaced the giant station clock. It still displayed 4:17. Ethan always answered the same way. That's when Grandpa locked the archive. It's also the moment he believed someone would eventually come back. Most people believed Ethan became wealthy because he discovered a hidden room behind the ticket office. That wasn't the real story. The hidden archive wasn't the treasure. The forgotten easements weren't the treasure. Even the $347 million trust wasn't the greatest inheritance. Samuel Walker left his grandson something far more valuable. The patience to preserve what others abandoned. The wisdom to build connections instead of barriers. And the understanding that the greatest destinations are never marked on a map. For a 16-year-old who had been thrown out with nothing but an abandoned train depot, the longest journey of his life began the moment he decided one forgotten station was worth saving.